Welcome to the Better Business Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Zelan. Join me week after week as I interview high-level entrepreneurs on their journey to success, both in business and personal development. Each week presents new stories to learn from and new ideas on how to run a better business. Stay updated with all the guests we'll have by subscribing to this podcast. Welcome to another episode of Better Business with Austin Zelan. I'm so excited to be here today with our special guest, Mina Elias. He does Amazon ads, you name it. This guy runs a successful business, and we're here to learn about how he's done and built what he has today. So very excited to have him on here and share with you guys the different things that you can possibly do to improve the quality of your business. And at the end of the day, we want you to run a better business. So Mina, thank you so much for joining me today. Very excited to have you on here. Can you just give us a little bit of a background story so people know who you are? And if you want to include figures like this is how much we're at in revenue per year and this is how many employees we have, I think it's going to be beneficial for people to know that.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so I'll give you my story. I was born in Egypt, grew up in Dubai. When I was 18, I decided to come to America for college.
Okay.
Got my bachelor's and master's, chemical engineering and industrial engineering. Worked up the corporate ladder, so 5 years, up until like 2018. I was working in a construction company, chemical engineer to mechanical engineer to civil engineer. And I was like outperforming everyone. Basically going into civil, I didn't know anything. And in 18 months, I was managing $12 million in projects. And there was one day where I made like a company $300,000 in profit in just one day. And they treated me like shit. So, me, like an entrepreneur, like I felt like a caged animal, and I decided like, I'm going to get out of this. So I decided to start a supplement brand. I've been passionate about supplements ever since I was a kid. I used to actually go to GNC, like when I was 12 years old. My mom would go to the mall and she would just leave me there. And I would spend like 3-4 hours looking at every single supplement. It's just like I had like some sort of addiction I still do. I have an addiction to supplements.
We're going to have to talk about your supplement stack here in a bit.
Yeah. My wife will tell you, bro. Like I have like a whole thing of like maybe 120 supplements at home.
Wow.
So
that's crazy.
I'm like, you know what? I've been fighting MMA since 2013. So got into MMA and fought like amateur and all that stuff. I still do jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna start a supplement brand. And in 2018, I believe like it was September 14th. I remember the day. I was in Egypt visiting my parents on vacation. And I was like looking at a bunch of supplements on my phone. My dad's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I have to buy like 5 different supplements. I have to buy like this one. And then I need to buy like betaine and beta-alanine and all this other stuff to add it in. So it's like actually a clinical dose. He's like, why don't you make your own supplement? I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? Like make your own supplements? Like, doesn't that cost like $100,000 to like start your own supplement brand? And he's like, how much does it cost? And so that question, I was like, okay, let me actually like look into it. So I went on Amazon and I looked at like bulksupplements.com. Like they sell like raw supplements. And I'm like, okay, if I built like an average like pre-workout, it would be these 5 supplements. And then if I combined them and I got like packaging and all this stuff, it would cost like $5. And if I was to sell it on Amazon, the average price is like $30. I'm like, that's $25 in profit. Maybe like there's something I could do. And I'm like, I'll just buy all the stuff from Amazon. So I like added the numbers. I'm like, for like $250, I could probably buy like 100 units worth. And 100 times, 30 is like, so I just ran the numbers. I was like, okay, buy for 250, sell for 3,000. Sounds like a business, right? And so I hit up one of my friends. I'm like, how can I start a business? And he's like, just go to LegalZoom.com and create an LLC. And so I went to LegalZoom.com, created an LLC, and bought the ingredients. And September 21st, they arrived at my doorstep. So I mixed them. I took them for 5 days, and I felt better. And it wasn't a pre-workout. It was an electrolyte supplement. And the reason is, I've been training MMA and I was on keto. And every night after training, I would go home because I'm sweating so much. And it was like 3 hours of training. I was losing a lot of sweat. I would dry scoop chicken broth just so I can get like 2,000 milligrams of sodium. I'm like, dude, there's got to be a better way. And there was nothing on Amazon, like no good supplements. So I created that supplement for that reason. And I tested it and it worked really well because it was way more balanced than just sodium. It was potassium, magnesium, and taurine as well. And then I gave it to 5 of my friends and I'm like, this company, the supplement brand, they're giving me their beta electrolyte powder. Don't tell anyone. Like they told me not to tell anyone, but I'm giving you because you guys are my friends. Because I didn't want them to have like a biased opinion. And after 5 days or so, they're like, dude, this stuff works, man. Like we feel way better. I'm like, okay, I have something. And then I'm like, guys, this is actually my brand. And they laughed it off. They didn't really believe me. But then I went home and like I posted like, guys, I'm officially the founder of MMA Nutrition LLC. Horrible name, right? MMA Nutrition, but whatever. I was just starting out. But that was essentially how I started the supplement brand. And this was like September, like October 10th, I think. So someone commented on that Facebook. He's like, bro, congratulations. I'm running an MMA show in Rhode Island in about in November 2nd. I'd love for you to come and get a booth. I'll give it to you for free. I'm like, okay. I'm like, what do I need? He's like, you just need a banner and product. So I went on Vistaprint. I made a banner. And then, Fiverr guy like made me a logo, made a banner. And then I'm like, okay, I gotta make products. So I bought ingredients and I hit up my roommate who was working at Costco at the time. We're living in like a tiny house, dude, like $1,000 a month rent. And I'm like, bro, I'll pay you $10 an hour or like $15 an hour if you fill out like this. I'll give you the formula. Just fill up the packets for me. And I bought these gold bags from Amazon. I bought stickers from like a place, and I started putting stickers on the bags. And so that's literally how the brand started. I failed miserably. I was trying to get it into like stores and gyms, and everyone turned me down. And I'm like, dude, why am I even doing this? I buy all my supplements on Amazon. They come in 2 days. I can return them if there's anything wrong with them. So I decided to like figure out how Amazon works. So I called Amazon 1,000 times. Finally, someone answered, and they're like, "Oh, let's connect you to Seller Central, the actual like selling department." They sent me an email with like how to set up my account and all this stuff. Basically, got on there, and then I just went into like an obsessive mode, right? Like complete obsession. I was spending like every waking hour of the day trying to figure out how Amazon worked, and I started making sales. And I started like cracking it through like getting reviews and doing ads, pay-per-click advertising. And dude, I was like a scientist, bro. I was writing every single campaign that I created down. If it was an auto and like it didn't work, and then I turned it off and I increased it. Like every single thing that I did, I documented, and then I was getting reviews. And then I like really started figuring it out. 6 months in, they fired me from my job. They're like, okay, we know this guy's checked out. Like when you quiet quit, they know. So I was checked out. I went from like top performer to like I'm just doing the bare minimum. I don't give a fuck anymore. Like you don't treat me like I'm valuable. And but the business was doing 20K a month in revenue and 4K a month in profits. So I decided to pack all my shit, go back to Egypt, and live there for 4 months, reinvest everything back into the business. And in those 4 months, I got better at Amazon ads because I'm spending like 8 hours a day doing it, and I got more and more reviews. So by then, I was at about like $10,000 a month in profits. Moved to LA. COVID hit, so it was like it was December of 2019. COVID hit in like March of 2020, and I was sitting at home, and I'm like, something told me, I was like, dude, you should like become famous in the Amazon space. I don't know what it was, but I decided to start getting on podcasts. So I was like posting in Facebook groups all the time. I'm like, guys, I launched this campaign. This worked, that worked, this didn't work, and people loved me for it. So I'm like, why don't I just do a bunch of podcasts? And I didn't have anything to sell, right? I'm just sharing all my knowledge. So I did one podcast a week, and in 6 months, like everyone knew who I was. And every single day, bro, I was getting like tens of people messaging me. They're like, Mina, please, like, can you run my ads? Like, because I was doing ads for managing a supplement brand, an electrolyte powder, which is like probably one of the most competitive niches on Amazon. And everyone else is like, dude, how are you doing this? Like, I need to know. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll help you. I'll do consultation calls, that kind of stuff. But I never really wanted to do an agency. I thought that I was actually going to turn my brand into like $100 million brand. But anyways, at the time I was doing like 80, 90,000 a month in revenue with my brand. But again, like cash flow with product-based businesses, I was only like keeping like 10K a month or whatever in products, in profits. But this aggregator hits me up. So this company, they raised about $400 million, something like that. They bought a $200 million company, and they had $200 million to build a team. So they hit me up and they're like, we heard you're like the Amazon PPC guy, like the pay-per-click guy. We want you to train our in-house team. I'm like, okay, cool. Here's a proposal. Like, this is how many hours it's going to take. They're like, well, we want to test you out first. So here's one of our brands, charge us by the hour, whatever. And I was charging them like 6K a month, 4 to 6K a month. And then like 4 months later, they hit me up and they're like, hey man, we just want to show you something. Here's you. And here's like this 6 other like really big name agencies out of LA and New York and whatever. And you outperformed every single one of them. So congratulations, like you have the proposal, whatever. Start training our team. So I spend a bunch of months training the team, and I was like, dude, like what the hell, man? Like I'm better than everyone else. And I liked what I was doing. So I'm like, you know what? This was $6,000 of like 2 hours, 3 hours a week of work and one employee. MMA nutrition was like full time, making me like $10,000 a month in profit. So I was like, this is clearly something like everyone knows me. Everyone keeps asking me to do it. I'm getting paid a shitload of money. And so that's how the agency started. And so it started, I mean, obviously the demand was already there. I started in May of 2021. with like one employee. And now we're doing $4 million a year in revenue, 82 employees. We're like scaling super fast. Like we're growing by like 1.5x, 2x every single year. And yeah, man, I haven't slowed down. I'm just speeding up.
Wow, that's awesome. What a story, man. Like, from solving your own need that you had with the supplements to kind of learning the ropes step by step. And, honestly, that's, I think, a lot of entrepreneurs' journey is they're not out on this big plan to become this famous person in whatever space, but step by step, their journey kind of guides them down that path. And I've seen that in my own life as well. I wanted to do something, I wanted to learn how to do it. And then step by step, as the need arose for something, I learned it. And that's really cool that you were able to leverage that. And May 2021, you start the company. About 2.5 years later, you got over 80 employees, which I think is awesome. So congrats on that, man. Now, what do you think allowed you to scale so quickly? Because maybe somebody's watching this and they're like, oh, yeah, I just actually started my business last year and I want to be at 83 employees next year. How can I do that? Or how can I at least get on the right path? What were the things that you did after you started that allowed you to do that?
Yeah. So the biggest things is number one, consultants. So what I did wrong in MMA nutrition, and I always kind of say this, right, is I wish I could go back in time in those 6 months that I spent working at that company until I got fired. I just quit and went to work for like one of my friends now who like owns like, an 8-figure supplement brand, right, on Amazon. Because then I would have learned so much faster. So the thing that I did right was I hit up every single person that I knew when I was starting Trivium. And I'm like, who do you know that can be my mentor that, has built an agency that's like really successful, blah, 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 doesn't have anything to sell. And asking enough people, and then I got a mentor, and then I found an operations consultant, and then I found a marketing consultant, and then I found a sales consultant, and then I found an HR consultant. And so right now I have like a stacked like deck of like consultants. Anything that I need, I mean, I basically look at my business. I'm like, okay, what's the bottleneck? Sales, perfect. I have a sales consultant. What do we need to do? Just tell me, like, teach me. And then we go through things, and he solves it for me. So. And then I'm in a mastermind. Like I'm in a mastermind with Eddie and Ashton. You interviewed Eddie recently, and so I'm basically like every day asking questions. Like, guys, I have this issue. We have this issue with this audit. People are filling out audits, they're not completing it. Why? And then you get like 8 responses of people giving you. So that has allowed me to like shortcut the time to success. So that's number one. Number two is I figured out like standard operating procedures. So when I would hire people, I basically made a list of like, here's everything that I'm doing that I want to offload. I created a video, and then I would offload it one by one and say, hey, watch this video, create a standard operating procedure based on it. So take screenshots of the video, write like little text so you actually like know what's going on, do it, and then, I'll check it. And then they do one thing, they do it really well. I think give them the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So as I'm onboarding them, they're getting like really, really good. And it's not like, I mean, the first employee I ever hired wasn't like that. I basically said, hey, like edit this video for me. Like I want it to look like this. And I gave him like an example, and it was done horribly, right? Because it's like, dude, how vague is that? Like edit a video and make it look like this versus now it's like, here's a checklist, like edit this video, do this, this is the thumbnail, this is the title, this is the description, this is like, the keywords that we need to include, this is the B-roll. So I went super in depth. And then the final piece is, I think like recruiting is like it's the same as sales. So it's like kind of like a balance, and like you have recruiting and sales. One of the biggest mistakes I made was I reached like 7 employees, and my sales were going up like this. And my mentor is like, bro, your sales projections look great. What about your hiring projections? And I'm like, what do you mean? What hiring projections? He's like, you obviously need people to match your hiring projections. I'm like, okay, I'll get on it. And then, I kind of like kept asking my employees if they know anyone, like the stupid way of hiring, right? Not like a real, like a pipeline. And like now we do hiring the exact same way we do sales. We have job postings everywhere. We're posting every single day. We're collecting, candidates every single day. We're running them through a process of qualification. And the top of the top, like make it to like the second interview and final interview, and we test them and all this stuff. And then we constantly have the best employee. And some people might be like, well, I'm just trying to hire like one employee. I think Top Grading or some book that I read was basically what they did is they're always hiring people and they're always replacing the bottom 10% of their company. And so that's what I'm doing now is even though like I don't need more, let's say like video editors or graphic designers or whatever, I'm still hiring video editors and graphic designers, because if I find a savage that's like a few $100 or maybe $1,000 a month more than a person that I have right now, I'm going to be like, bro, like you need to step up, or this person wants to work with us. And if they don't step up, then they're getting replaced. And that's what creates like a culture of excellence. I know it's like sometimes cutthroat, but you need like really good people, really good processes, and you need people guiding you. Those were the keys to my success, I would say, this time.
Yeah. No, definitely. I definitely understand what you're saying about consultants and SOPs and stuff like that. And I would like to dig a little bit deeper on that. So, when somebody's looking for a consultant, like where did you find your consultants? Did you just like Google consultants or was it like a referral? And then also, how specific did you get? Is it just a general, like part of your business? Hey, I need a sales consultant, or hey, I need somebody that can help me increase conversions, or I need somebody who can train my sales team. Like, how specific did you get with those consultants and where did you find them?
Yeah, how specific? I think it's like as if you're going to a doctor, bro. Like if you're going to like either an ENT or like a gastroenterologist, you're not just going to a doctor. Because if you go to a doctor, what they're gonna do is they're gonna look at you and then gonna refer you to a specialist. So for me, I'm always looking for specialists. So I write down exactly what my problem is. I have like this way of always looking at my business. I'm like, okay, I have marketing, right? Like, how many leads am I getting? Do I need more leads? Is that like the bottleneck? And then out of those leads, how many of them turn into sales calls and sales? Do I need better sales? And then what's my operations like? Am I onboarding them correctly? What about my finances? What about my fulfillment? What about my, upsells, whatever? And so I have all these like categories in my business, and there's always one of them that is a bottleneck, right? Like at one point it was the hiring, the recruiting, right? I wasn't recruiting people well enough. At one point it was like sales, right? I recruited too many people and I couldn't get enough sales. It was because like I didn't have enough leads. So there's always one bottleneck. And so I'll like write down that like problem statement, like, hey, my current bottleneck is I feel like I need more leads because my team is kind of like ready to take on more work. I'm getting enough leads. My close rate is like 42%, which seems like from asking people, it's like a pretty high. So the only thing I can do now is get more leads. And so I'll describe the whole situation, and then I'll go on like number one is obviously asking my network, and that usually doesn't work. Like you might like once in every like 5 times you'll get someone good, but I'll DM like every single person that I know, and I'll be like, do you know someone who can help me solve this problem? And I describe what they look like. I'm like, I need someone who has worked at an agency that has been doing at least 8 figures or more. They have managed this many employees. They are experienced in this, and this. Because it's like if you hit me up and you're like, hey bro, like I'm looking for like a girl, like a girlfriend, like do you know anyone? And I'm like, bro, like come on, that's so broad. But if you're like, I'm looking for like this exact specific thing, I'm like, yeah, I know one person, or I don't know anyone. So that's how specific I try and get. I'm like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. This is what they've done. This is how they're doing shit. And then I'll hit everyone up. I'll hit up masterminds. Then I go to LinkedIn. And so in LinkedIn, I'll find like, okay, for example, I'm an agency, right? So who are other agencies that are bigger than me? Bad marketing, Right Hook Digital, Structured Social, my Amazon guy, whatever, like a bunch of other agencies. And then I'll go and find the most senior person in that agency at that like division. So like, for example, if it's marketing, I'll go find the CMO or the head of marketing or whatever. And then I'll DM them like on LinkedIn, and I'll say, hey man, it looks like you have like a really good track record. I'm looking to do X, Y, and Z. I need some help. Can you help me? I'd love to pay for your time. And then I'll usually do 8 to 10 calls. And out of those people, there's maybe 2 people that are like really good, and I'll pick the best one. But yeah, that's usually my process. It's through network, LinkedIn. Obviously, if you're in a mastermind, clarity.fm sometimes helps too. But at the end of the day, it's just like I need to get the most amount of like leads possible for that role, and then talk to all of them, and then see who I vibe with the most.
What's clarity.fm?
It's like a consulting platform. Like, do you know MentorPass?
No.
So like MentorPass and clarity.fm, they're basically like Upwork for like consulting. So basically,
Gotcha.
you go in, you're like, for example, I'm trying to get better at speaking. So I typed in like public speaking. And then a bunch of guys show up, and it's like, this guy's been speaking and spoke on this many stages in front of this many people. And they're like, $60, not 60, $600 an hour. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'll book a call with them, and get on a call, and like, we'll talk.
Awesome. Okay, interesting. Yeah, those are probably great resources for people to leverage for something like this. Now, another question I have for you is about the SOPs. So I think that a lot of business owners fail because they don't have SOPs in place. And then it just becomes too complicated and the business isn't efficient and they start losing money here and losing money there. So when you're building these SOPs, did you build them all yourself or did you hire somebody to come in and build those out for you?
I built everything myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And so now as you're scaling, are you still continuing to build them yourself?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through like the difference between when I first started and now that I'm scaling. So when I
Mhm.
first started, what I did is I literally created a Google sheet, and then I for 2 weeks I wrote down every single thing that I did. So I was posting an Instagram post. I was updating my title on Amazon. I was updating this campaign, doing this, doing that, and I wrote it all down for 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, if I can delegate like 70 or 80% of that, I basically will open up a lot of time. Um, and so I sorted it out by like highest value to lowest value. Usually highest value is like the most complex stuff that you might not want to delegate, at
Mhm.
least to like, someone who's lower level. And the low level stuff is like, this is like $3, $5 an hour tasks that you can give out to anyone. And so I started at the bottom and I would create a video and I'm like, if you can replicate exactly how I did this, it's a success. And so I created the videos and then I worked all my way, like all the way up. And then I would hire an employee and I would delegate that. Then it started getting a little bit more complex. So I started having the divisions. So in every division, I would build like a playbook. And I go into Miro.com and I'm like, okay, what are the general processes of that division? So, for example, marketing, we have Facebook. So, on Facebook, we sit down, I go look at like, these 10 people, what they're talking about. I go look at Amazon News. Then from there, I decide 5 topics. Then from there, I'm going to write 3 posts and so on. So, that's like a general process. So, I have all my processes. So, if you were to come in new into the division and you would look at the processes, you're like, okay, I generally know what's going on, like high level, like what's going on in the division. And then from there, I take each process as like a title, and then under it, there'll be like, here's all the SOPs that go into that process. So here's the SOP of how to research the people. Here's the SOP of how to come up with the topics. Here's the SOP of how to do this and do this and so on. And so then I have all of my SOPs for that division. Now it got to a point where I was like, okay, you have 80 people. I can't be doing this. This is like, there's more important things. So I hired a continuous improvement and processes manager. And this person's job is to go in and sit down with every division manager and they're like, okay, show me everything that you're doing. And so like they'll go deep into every single piece of what they're doing, like every day, what are you doing, what's the process here, what's the process there. Make sure that it's all laid out in Miro as like a kind of a process flow, and then say, okay, here's all the titles of all the things that we need to add as SOPs. And then once everything's documented, so this is how it was built, right? All the divisions, all the processes, all the different SOPs that go into these processes. And then every, like, I think quarter or so, she'll be done with all the divisions. She'll go and revisit. And so she'll talk to people and say, let's talk about this process. Is Instagram still the same? Are we doing this? And, oh, no, we have this new thing that we added where now we have like a grading sheet for the content and it needs to fit like these 10, criteria before we're able to post them. So now an SOP gets updated. So now it's like a system that's constantly, improving and updating in terms of SOPs. And that's kind of the scalable way of doing it, where the division manager is the person that kind of is the most knowledgeable and knows kind of how everything gets done. And then there's an SOP person that's literally their whole job is to make sure things keep getting documented. But also that person identifies like bottlenecks and inefficiencies in the division. So while they're going through the process in SOPs, they're like, I wonder why you were doing all this manually. What if we integrated this and this?
Mhm.
And their job is to continuously improve the different divisions.
Gotcha. So it's like continuous process improvement and they're revisiting that. That's a very important aspect of SOPs. You don't just create them, you also have to update them, keep them current, and continue making them better and more efficient. So that's awesome. I think that people can really benefit from building their SOPs. And like you said, just documenting what you do and offloading that to employees, to people that you're hiring, because a lot of people honestly get stuck there. And I've seen, like, as a third party coming into companies, sometime I'm like, dude, like, why are you still doing this? Why are you still doing that? And helping them make that realization that they shouldn't be doing those things because their time is more valuable here or over here. I think that's a very important aspect of all of that. So cool. Now, as far as like company culture, how important would you say company culture is to you and to your employees, and how you've been able to build your company?
Yeah, company culture is huge, and I never really understood company culture, right?
Hmm.
Like for me, I was like, okay, does that mean like games and game day and like
Pizza
like
party.
pizza party wins, like the wins channel, all this stuff?
Yeah.
And then I started realizing like these are all like kind of small, tiny components of it, but like real company culture is like it's like a fraternity, it's like what's the vibe, right? Like are we a killer team? That's kind of the vibe that you want to create. So think of like when you go in and you watch like a bunch of like UFC fighters, like they're like a team. Like you see the culture, like they're always pushing each other, they're all on the same vibe, they all have the same mission. There's not like some random kind of like people that are chilling, eating pizza, hanging out with these like UFC fighters, right? And so to me, like that's what I started to understand as like that's real company culture. It's like yes, mission, vision, values, right? Like that's cool. I'll talk about the core values because I feel like that's a very important thing that I learned. But at the end of the day, like the culture is basically finding individuals that all have like the same kind of vibe, the same goal. They're all like on the same mission, basically. And it's not like you have one guy that's like barely scraping by and another guy that's like killing it, like that's willing to always take more work and all this kind of stuff. So that's the first thing, right? Is like you're basically like interviewing your company at all times and you're identifying who fits the vibe. And honestly, I think the vibe starts with me, right? So what's my vibe, right? Like hard work, dedication, consistency, no excuses, 1% better every day. That's kind of like my vibe, right? I want people like that. No bullshit, no politics, none of that stuff. And so I try and distill that into core values. So what are core values, right? Core values is basically like a rule book, like in the country, right? Like here in America, you can't kill, you can't cheat, you can't do that kind of stuff. Not cheat actually. You can't kill, you can't like steal because not because like Trump is or Biden's gonna like put you in jail. It's because there's a rule book, right? And so it kind of makes it very like it's not one guy that like he's the bad guy. It's like this is the rule book and we're following that rule book. So that's the way that I looked at core values. I said if I can create these values where I would hold everyone according to those values, I'm no longer the bad guy. I'm no longer the dictator, Mina, Mina wants everything Mina's way. I'm like, this is our company values. You're either fitting in those values or you're not. So our values are like always add value. Take full accountability, no excuses. 1% better every day. Progress over perfection. What is it? Like we have like a few other ones. I can't remember. But so now that those were the core values, I'm like, every time like someone does something, I'm like, guys, remember, we're just trying to be 1% better every day. Or I'm like, guys, remember, always take accountability. So even though the client messed up and did this and did that, you could have done this, and this that was still in your control that would have made the situation better, right? And they're like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, so you didn't take full accountability. You took partial accountability. That doesn't fit the core values. So now I'm no longer the bad guy. I just created the rules and now I'm holding everyone to those rules. And to me, that's the company culture is like creating the rule book and then getting everyone who fits that vibe of those rules. And because at the end of the day, you want to create like a culture of excellence, like people who are similar, who are on the same path, they have the same mission, they share the same characteristics. Because again, like if you have an A player and then you bring a C player in, like they're not gonna work well together. The A player is gonna be like, dude, why am I busting my ass and this guy's fucking watching Netflix all day? And then you're gonna lose the A player. And so that's like the risk that you run with not having like a good company culture is, and then there's also all these other things, right? Like the other soft, like emotional things, like, people that want to stay late and they feel like they belong and all that kind of stuff. All of that, like it builds off of like the core values and, all the people being the same. Because if everyone's the same, if it's me and you working together, I'm like, yeah, dude, whatever. It's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I'm not too worried about like clocking out, right? But if it's a bunch of people that are not the same, I'm like, dude, I can't wait to get out of here. Like, there's like this chick Pam, like in this other office that all she does is complain about her husband. It's like that's the vibe. It's like a different vibe.
Yeah. No, it definitely makes sense, and I like that the way you've described it as kind of like a rule book because at the end of the day, it's like your guiding compass for your company. And you can always bring people back to that compass, back to that rule book. Like, hey, the actions that you're doing does not actually align with these values. And it gives you the opportunity to not only educate, but also you don't have to be the bad guy while doing it. And they don't look at you as somebody who just, does these things. So yeah, definitely important to create that and to bring that up during the hiring process. It's like, these are our values. You need to understand them and embody them. If not, then obviously there's going to be problems. So very, very important. I think every company needs those. Now, as far as employee retention, so kind of to dovetail off of this, what have you done to increase your employee retention? And would you say you have a good retention rate or is it pretty high churn? Like what's been your experience?
Yeah, we have pretty high retention. I would say most people, in the last 6 months, we've maybe had one person quit or two people quit. So, out of 80, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
Here's the things that I feel like contribute to good employee retention. Number one, I'm very competitive. So I'm constantly surveying the market and I'm like, salary is one thing, right? Like, because you can you can always like have this other company that has like, $1,000 more salary a month or whatever. But I feel like there's a lot of other things that people care about that is more important than the salary. So for example, like I was working at like this company where I would show up every day at 7 a.m. I was working my ass off. I outperformed everyone. And then one day I showed up at 7, 10 a.m. And my boss is like, next time you show up late, I'm going to take it out of your personal time off. And I'm like, dude, who cares, right? I'm a salaried employee. I'm working in the office on my computer. I take lunch at my computer. I'm working for 9 hours a day. Why the fuck do you care if I'm 10 minutes late? Like, it doesn't really make a difference. And so there's all these like intangible stuff that people care about. And that's the first thing so we interview employees like when we're onboarding them, and we're like, okay, what do you care about? What are your motivations? Some people are money motivated. Some people are family motivated. Some people are freedom motivated, freedom of time, So I start looking at all these other companies, and I talk to all these, employees that are coming from like toxic workplaces and toxic relationships. And I figure out, okay, here's how we can gain our competitive advantage. Number one, no time tracking, right? It's going to be a performance-based culture. You're either performing or you're not performing. I don't need to track your time. What about like paid time off? I'm like, okay, cool. Most companies are doing 3 weeks. I'll do 4 weeks. And obviously at the end of the day, like if it's a performance culture, you're going to get your shit done and you're going to have coverage. So it's not going to be a big deal. What about like professional development, like investing in people? A lot of companies don't have that. So I'm like, okay, cool. There's so many free resources and free guides. And anyways, a lot of the times the employees don't even like take that up, right? I'm like, here, like, do you want this course? Do you want that course? Yeah, I would love to. They take the course and then, but it just feels really good. It feels like you're investing in them. And then there's all these other things like employees who are like financially motivated. I'm like, listen, man, I know you're financially motivated. I want to double your salary this year. So here's what you can do. Obviously, I'm not just going to give you a raise, but there's this incentive, and this incentive, which if you do, it's going to make the company more money, which in turn will give you like a commission, So I start getting all these like money hungry people on like commission structure. So all of my fulfillment team, they're incentivized by upsells. They're incentivized by case studies. So I'm like, case studies get us more clients. Upsells makes us more money. So if you want to double your salary, all you have to do is just make sure that you're constantly upselling. And not upselling for the sake of like, oh, let's just get more money from the client. But like, you're adding more value. Like you're like, hey man, your creatives kind of suck. If we improve your creatives, your ads will perform better. You're going to make more profit. So let's, improve your creatives. Here's samples of our work. Here's case studies of how we've improved creatives and they made more profit. And then that's it. So it's just, I think, really getting down to the root of what everyone is motivated by. So for me personally, I'm motivated by the freedom, like freedom of time, freedom of location. I'm motivated by money. I don't like to be told what to do. So I want to have autonomy. Just say, here's your goal and just go achieve it. And this is the rule book, right? Like, so don't do this, don't do this. This is what you're allowed to do. Here's the goal. Do whatever you want. And then don't check on me like every hour. And so you just tell me like, this is your goals. Here's your motivations. Like, here's how you can make more money. And I'm just going to work like a madman because I want to make more money. And I feel like I'm free, right? Because I'm setting my own schedule or I'm working from home. And so that's kind of like how we were able to really, it's just really looking at like competitors and what they're lacking in, and then understanding people's motivations and combining the two.
Yeah, definitely. And so kind of touching on that working from home aspect of it, as I understand, we kind of talked about this, you have a totally remote office. So you have 83 employees around the world or around the US, and you don't have a central office. So has that presented any unique challenges in your experience? Like even with culture, it's one thing to have culture in a physical office, and then it's a different thing if everything's virtual.
Yeah, 100%. So it's definitely harder with culture, right? Yeah, like when you're in the office, number one, like everyone's is gonna see me work, and when they see the pace that I work at, it's probably gonna raise the pace that they're working at. It's also gonna help people stay accountable. Like, we do have some people that are like, I'll look at their logins and logouts, which is like what they've done for the day, and I'm like, wow, it took you like 8 hours to edit one video that's like 10 minutes long. That doesn't sound right. So it's things like that. Like an office is way better. But then, my advantage is like, number one, the freedom that you feel like, you're like, you don't have to come into an office every single day.
Yep.
No one's watching you. And so to overcome those challenges, I think it just required a lot more planning when it comes to like how people are spending their day. So we do logins and logouts. So every single day, you have to spend the first like 10 minutes planning out your day. you're going to list all of the things that you need to accomplish, and you're going to give an estimated time of like the accomplishment. And then we'll take a look, your manager will take a look and be like, okay, that sounds fair. And as long as you're, kind of like getting things done, and again, it's like a performance culture. As long as you're getting things done, that's fine. In terms of culture, we've had to do a lot of like remote stuff. So every single team is required to do like some sort of game day or something like that once a week with their team. What we found is that helps really break the ice. Like it's super awkward because you're constantly getting on Zooms and you're just like sitting there and you're like, okay, yeah, this is what I did. So we started adding like 10 minutes of like everyone is gonna sing like 5 seconds of a song, and then we're gonna record it and play it back, and like stuff like that where like everyone starts laughing. We created a culture club, and it's all these like funny things. So basically, my last idea was one person is gonna send the first 5 seconds of a song, and it's gonna be like a shitty recording, and then the first person to reply in the thread and sing that song correctly wins. And so we basically got a bunch of people like singing songs, and it was funny, right? Because you get to hear everyone singing, and like not everyone has a good voice. So it's things like that that kind of break the ice and make work like a little bit more fun. But at the end of the day, it does require way more like not micromanagement, but like you have to have like a good system of like understanding what your team is doing and how they're spending their day and what they're accomplishing. And if you take your eyes off the ball, they are gonna slack. Like a lot of people will slack. It's just kind of human nature.
Mm. So what have you done to combat that slacking? Is it just middle management, or is it like, have you, what exactly have you done to make sure people aren't slacking? Because I mean, that's a concern for a lot of people. Why would I hire somebody remote and I don't even know what they're doing,
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's not time tracking. It's not screen tracking or whatever, screen
Hmm.
recording. It's mainly if you know OKRs, right? Objectives and key results. So if you have something like that set up where it's like, okay, here's the objective of the division and here's the key results that you need to hit. Then you're held to that, right? And so under you is going to be a manager who's like worried that his bonus and his performance and his like quarterly review
Yeah.
is based on how well he hits those goals. So he's going to make sure that the person under him does whatever they need to do to hit that. And that person knows that this is his KPIs, and if he doesn't hit them, again, he's gonna lose his bonus. Not gonna do well in the quarterly review, and he's subject to maybe getting terminated. So the best way to combat that is not just like middle management. Middle management is great, and making sure that managers are checking shit out like all the time. But I think it's just saying, here's the scoreboard, right? Like you need to hit this, and this.
Yeah.
Are you hitting it? Yes or no? And then frequently like reviewing that. So every single day, every single week, look at what your progress is, and say, hey, why are we behind? And then like the proof is going to be in the like the paper trail of like, okay, what did you do every single day? What was your login? What did you plan on doing? What was your log out? What did you actually complete? And then where's the gap?
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. I really like that. And I think that tracking that is, it's very important. And did you develop these KPIs on your own, or did you follow like a model or somebody's template for that? Or did you actually just go out and think of them on your own?
Yeah, I think a lot of it we thought of on our own. And so it starts with like the financial numbers, right? So it's like, okay, cool. What do I think I can do in terms of like growth? So for
Hmm.
the next like 12 months. So let's say, 20K a month net profit growth. So
Yeah.
I map out my revenue, and then I map out my profit. And then from there, I'm like, okay, what are the things that must happen for me to hit those goals? So I'm like, okay, well, this level of churn needs to happen. This level of upsell needs to happen. This level of like qualified leads needs to happen. So I'm like, okay, cool. So for this level of churn needs to happen, what else needs to happen? And so, and that then it starts branching out. So it's like, here's the main, financial objective. Here's like three things that if they are hit, we will definitely reach that financial objective. Now here's this one thing that we need to hit, which is the churn. What are three things that need to happen for us to hit that churn? And so, one thing could be for us to have like only a 5% churn, you need to have this level of communication, this level of like strategy, and this level of like employees. And I'm like, okay, cool. What do we need to do to hit this level of communication? And then you kind of keep branching it down, and if everything keeps getting worked on, it leads to the top, which is that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
And
Working backwards to kind of build that up.
and I think that's like OKRs, like loosely OKRs.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, this has been a pleasure having you here, man. Is there anything else that you could share with our audience? They're watching this. There's a lot of hot topics in the marketplace right now: AI, automation, all that stuff, and how we can be more efficient. Is there anything else you would like to share with them on how you run your business and how they could apply that to their business to run a better business?
Yeah, the first thing I want to highlight is I'm noticing that it is right now like a good market for talent. So two things are happening, and I'll give you a hack on how I do this.
Yeah.
Two things are happening. Number one is people are getting let go. There's mass layoffs, and so probably like the subpar people are getting let go. But what happens is the A players now have to do 2 or 3 people's jobs. So they're not happy in their jobs. They're not getting 2 or 3 times the salary, and so it's a really hot market to hire talent. Here's what I like to do. I like to, find companies that are competitors to mine, and I like to start hitting people up on LinkedIn that work at those companies and say that I'm hiring for a certain role, and not ask them if they're interested, but ask if they know anyone that is interested. And so I'll say, hey man, I'm hiring, like for example, hey man, I'm hiring a coach. Would you happen to know anyone that would be interested? I'm paying this much for this role. And you're like, actually, I'm currently interested. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. Here's a form, like fill it out, and I'd love to chat with you. And so, and I offer a commission if they help me place the role. So I'm basically kind of like low-key poaching, but without actually poaching. And that's helped me a lot, because people will tell you really good talent is currently employed. Like if they're really good, why would they not be employed, right? Usually they're always employed. And so that's kind of the sneakiest and best way to get to them without using a recruiter and like paying 20% of their annual salary and stuff.
Yeah. So what would you say is your success rate with something like that? You message somebody on LinkedIn just as a, hey, do you know anybody who's interested? Like how many people respond? How many people are typically good fits? Like what has been your success with that?
Yeah, so my head of operations was one of the first people that I did this with. I went through 3 recruiters and I got 0 like good people from them. And then I messaged about 42 people, and he was one of 4 that responded, and he's a perfect fit, man. He's like killing it right now.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. It's a good strategy, especially right now, like you said, and it's easier to identify them because the mediocre players got let go, the B players, C players, but the A players are still there because every company knows that they're critical. And if they want to survive this economic downturn, whatever you want to call it, they need those A players to make that happen. So cool. Very great insights. Thank you so much for sharing, and especially how you've scaled your company to 83 employees in about 2 years. I think it's incredible. Congratulations on all the success. So if somebody wants to find you and maybe hire you as a coach or learn more from you, where can they do that?
Yeah, so if you want to find me, my name is Mina Elias, Minaelias. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm at the Mina Elias. I wouldn't do Facebook. I probably wouldn't get the request. So hit me up anytime. I'm happy to help, happy to answer any questions. And then the website is called triviumco.com. That's triviumco.com. So if you're looking for help with Amazon or anything like that, we're happy to help.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, you heard it directly from Mina Elias, how to scale a company, how he's been able to develop these SOPs and build a culture that's a winning culture. So thank you guys for joining us. This is Better Business with Austin Zelan, and I'll see you all in the next episode.